Buongiorno tutti. Sadly, that is the extent of my Italian. My name is Marissa Clark, and I'm the coordinator for accessible programs at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And I've been running our existing award-winning programs and creating new and innovative programs since 2003. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Palazzo Strozzi for inviting me here today. So today I'm going to talk about our accessible workshops for people with Parkinson's disease and their care partners. I'm going to discuss why I started the program, how the program is run, including the design of the projects, and finally I'll talk about the results, what I've learned along the way, and the impact that the program has had on the Parkinson's community. But first I'm going to give you a brief history about accessible programs at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. The Office of Accessible Programs has been in existence since 1966. So for 50 years, we've been bringing art to the broadest possible audience. In addition to being physically accessible, our many programs offer access to the fantastic art found in our collection. We have programs for people with intellectual disabilities, programs for people with Alzheimer's, military veterans, you name it, we have it. So in 2013, I started the workshops for people with Parkinson's disease. And this is a program that's very special to me personally. My aunt was diagnosed several years ago with Parkinson's, and I watched a once vibrant and talented artist and jewelry designer start to lose, among other things, her fine motor skills. And she was looking for a way to express her creativity within the confines of her present abilities. So that started me wondering, were there any other museum-based art-making programs out there specifically for people with Parkinson's? I looked all over, I scoured the internet, I couldn't find any. So with the intent of starting a program myself, I started doing some research on the disease. So what is Parkinson's disease? Parkinson's, or PD, is a chronic neurological condition that's named after Dr. James Parkinson, and he's the London physician who described it first in 1817. Parkinson's is a type of movement disorder. It happens when nerve cells or neurons in the brain don't produce enough of a brain chemical called dopamine. This is a chemical that's vital to movement. There are an estimated 7 to 10 million people worldwide living with Parkinson's disease. And in the United States alone, as many as 1.5 million individuals live with PD. And this is more than the combined number of people diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy, and ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. Approximately 60,000 Americans are diagnosed with Parkinson's each year. What are some of the symptoms? The motor symptoms can include tremor of the hands, arms, legs, and jaw, muscle rigidity, micrographia. This is when your handwriting gets really small. A loss of balance, and a slowness of movement. Some non-motor symptoms can include cognitive changes, depression, dementia, anxiety, and it should be stressed that each individual may have some or all of these symptoms to varying degrees. So the questions are, does creating art benefit people living with Parkinson's disease, and does it benefit their care partners? Well, when I was doing research for the program, I came across a study that was done at Hofstra University in New York. The study was called The Effects of Clay Manipulation on Somatic Dysfunction and Emotional Distress in Patients with Parkinson's Disease. The focus of this study was on therapy as a support for medical treatment and palliative care. And so they had a total of 41 patients that were placed in two matched groups, so 22 patients with Parkinson's and 19 without. And each participant was asked to manipulate a ball of clay and then to respond to follow-up questions on their experience. Quantitative and qualitative results showed a positive outcome with significant decrease in somatic and emotional symptoms in both groups. This research supports the value of an art therapeutic clay program for patients diagnosed with Parkinson's and caregivers. And while these decreases in symptoms are only temporary, Dr. Oliver Sacks, who is a professor of neurology at New York School of Medicine, had this to say about it. He said, "The therapeutic power of art is temporary. It can liberate the patient only while the performance or the creative act is occurring. But knowing that they can be liberated in this way, and in doing so, reclaim for a while their healthy selves, is profoundly encouraging and therapeutic for patients with Parkinsonism. So once I concluded my research, I thought, hey, we could do that. We've been doing these types of workshops with other groups of people for years. So our first workshop specifically for people with Parkinson's and their care partners was born. But you might be wondering, am I a licensed art therapist? No, I'm not. Is the teaching artist I use for these classes an art therapist? No, she's not. But working at an art museum, I am a little biased. We art lovers already know that looking at and creating art is beneficial in general, and it's beneficial to everyone. So while we don't say that we are providing art therapy, we feel that all art is therapeutic. So how is our program structured? Each workshop includes a 1-hour customized gallery tour with a museum guide and a 2-hour studio art lesson and project that's based on what they learned on the tour. Participants are typically adults who come on their own or with a care partner, and most return for each workshop month after month and year after year, and this really allows us to form long-standing relationships with them and allows them to progress from project to project. In the 3 years that the program has been in existence, it's served almost 1,500 people with PD, along with their care partners in the Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware regions. So what makes these workshops so successful and keeps people coming back year after year is the fact that we have an empowered and flexible team behind each class. Prior to each workshop, we work with museum guides to develop a tour that's going to be both informative and fun. In addition to a rigorous 2 years of training, our volunteer museum guides receive general accessibility training. However, those who want to guide specific types of accessible tours are required to have additional training. This training gives the guides a greater understanding of the people who will be on their tours. It's stressed that each individual is different and might require a different approach. Therefore, being flexible is the key to the success of this program. In the guide's case, this idea isn't something new. Instinctively, they observe their audience's reactions, they observe their body language, their facial expressions, and they adjust their tours from there. But what makes our tours especially engaging is the research that the guides do to bring the stories behind the artwork alive. They're interactive, they're human and funny, sometimes maybe a little irreverent, but they're never boring or stuffy. Before the workshop even starts, the entire workshop team, that would be myself, the teaching artist, a volunteer, and the museum guide, we meet each participant as they come in the door. We've learned that seeing a familiar and friendly face when entering the museum dispels any fear or anxiety that they might have, and it gives them time to acclimate to their environment and just relax. So having this empowered and flexible team enables us to respond to any unexpected circumstances. The flexibility to improvise minimizes the effects of an individual's disability and ensures the full participation of a more diverse audience. Overall, the premise of these workshops is that opportunities to discover and develop your aesthetic skills contributes vitally to your well-being. But there are challenges to this. There's a passive quality to many museum experiences. We see ourselves not as creators of art, but rather as the audience. It's sometimes difficult to remember that a person just like you created everything you see in the art museum. It can also be hard to identify with artists and their work. Rather than putting you in the mood to create, museums can sometimes have the opposite effect. When you see a masterpiece, you start to wonder, why should I even bother? There's an intimidating quality to the museum. A place that celebrates creativity can often stifle it in people. People with Parkinson's may feel even more intimidated. So this raised a question for us: how can we take advantage of the wonderful treasures in the museum to actively stimulate rather than intimidate? Well, when designing our workshops, we try to keep in mind a few basic ideas. We design workshops that we would want to take ourselves. Each studio experience begins with a demonstration of a technique or a full art lesson centered around the themes that we explored in the galleries. The teaching artist and I practice the techniques beforehand, and we always do the project ourselves. If we don't have fun, we don't do it. We build in risk and surprise. The workshops are challenging, not because of some limited abilities, but because of the artistic and creative challenges that we build into each lesson. Each workshop is designed to help participants develop strategies to accomplish tasks and break through self-imposed constraints. We want them to leave every workshop questioning which of their constraints are real and which are self-imposed. Maybe who you think you are is no longer accurate. It's also necessary for care partners to be able to adjust their assumptions in order to help participants be fully engaged in the workshop. And lastly, we try to remove the obstructions that prevent people from fully participating. Again, flexibility is key here. Because symptoms can vary from person to person, we never have a one-size-fits-all program. Having a variety of tools on hand and working out ahead of time possible barriers to completing a project allows for all to participate in a meaningful way. So when I saw that Parkinson study from Hofstra University, I was so excited because the teaching artist that I use has a background in clay. Therefore, our first workshop, Form and Fancy, taught students a Japanese technique called narikomi, which involved layering designs of two colors of clay. It's a lot like making sushi. For many participants, this was the first time that they had worked in clay since they were little, or at all. And a perfect example of adjusting our assumptions with regard to a participant's ability came during this clay project. Participants could make either a bowl or a plate. And we expected that rolling out the clay and forming shapes would be especially challenging for one participant who only had the use of one hand. But undeterred, he decided to create a mug instead, and this is a more complicated form than the others. The assumption that he would need extra help was totally mistaken. He not only worked independently, but completed the project using the techniques as shown to create a piece that was more polished than most, and here we see his mug on the right. Participants enjoyed themselves so much in that first workshop that they expressed an interest in more than just clay work, so we decided to include other types of art lessons and topics. In our Pillars and Portals workshop, the participants learned the rich history and symbolism behind the museum's carved stone archways and their pillars with the capitals. And for this project, we mimicked the stone with a soft carving material that then would be attached to a picture frame, making an archway or a portal. We had another option for the more adventurous ones in the group, that of carving a pillar and capital out of candle wax. This gave everyone the experience of carving and of using new tools that perhaps they had never used before and would never think to use due to the nature of their disease. The tools were very sharp, so this caused us to reassess the risk of having people with Parkinson's do a carving project. So we asked ourselves, how do we create innovative approaches that allow the maximum number to participate on equal footing with acceptable risks? Well, we believe that everyone has the right to be included in the community of rational risk takers. So we decided to do the project, but we worked on demonstrating and constantly reinforcing the safe use of the carving tools. Participants learned 4 basic cuts, and we emphasized that students should go slowly and take their time so that they could always stay in control. Another important part of this lesson was that carving is a subtractive process. There are no second chances with this, so you need to open yourself up to the idea of mistakes and the risk of failure. And as you'll see in the following slide, the project was a success, and there were no trips to the hospital, thank goodness. In fact, many participants remarked that when they started to carve, their shaking decreased or even stopped altogether in some cases. So here are some examples of finished projects. We have the pillar in the center and the portals on either side. Our experience has shown that workshops succeed best when an effort is made to make difficult challenges accessible rather than to present more accessible challenges. It's of primary importance that the lessons are challenging for everyone. Because the level of capability varies from person to person, the same project must be adaptable in order to accomplish this. Ideally, participants derive satisfaction from multiple sources. One source is the ideas and the decisions they are asked to ponder. Those who have more skill can add greater complexity, while those who have fewer skills can still make aesthetic decisions about things. And in our workshops, if a participant can't hold a brush or perform a particular motor task, they direct a helper, but they're always responsible for aesthetic decision-making and ownership. They derive satisfaction from their aesthetic response to the works in our collection. Everybody has a story to tell when they see something in the museum. They're also able to develop ideas of what they like and what they don't like in the way of art. Another source is the challenges of the workshop task itself. Learning something new or using new tools and materials you've never used in a long time, if at all, can be challenging for anyone. And lastly, satisfaction comes from the justifiable pride that comes from exceeding their expectations and confronting self-imposed constraints. Stretching to make progress in a goal a person finds meaningful is more satisfying and valuable than a success in a more simple or trivial effort. When making art, you have a chance to identify with the process and gain a greater understanding of what it takes both practically and aesthetically to produce such work. This next workshop we called Masters in Disguise. And it came out of a lesson my teaching artist gave to her college students as a way to closer identify with the artist's technique. On the right, you see a small section or piece from the painting on the left. Participants choose a piece that they like without ever seeing the whole painting. And the goal here is to disguise the piece by matching its colors and brushstrokes enough so that it fades into the background. Sometimes the hardest part of creativity is just starting. This project eliminates the fear of a blank canvas. It allows for easier aesthetic decision-making, and that makes it possible to reach a state of flow. And flow is an art therapy term that means a state of mind you achieve when you're fully immersed in a task, forgetting about the outside world. And after the participants finish their project, we go on a hunt in the galleries to find the painting that their piece came from. And oftentimes people become so invested in the artist or the artwork that they've been studying that when they finally find their painting, they become very excited and say, "That's my guy." We then compare all the different approaches to solving the mystery masterpiece. And so here's an example of a finished project on the right. And here's another one. And incidentally, this is the project that I'll be teaching later on today. It's really a lot of fun, and it doesn't require any previous art experience. When art activities are offered to people who have disabilities, the focus often tends to be on therapeutic or compensatory value, rather than on the intrinsic value of making art. Our workshops, however, focus on producing art, not on providing art therapy. This program enables participants to see art as a human activity that they can take part in. But that being said, the feedback we get indicates that even though we focus on producing art, there is a therapeutic byproduct in doing so. In harmony with the research done on the subject, my participants with PD benefit tremendously from participating. Some of these benefits include the fact that all participants have indicated that they have had a decrease in symptoms, such as depression, anxiety, tremors, micrographia, just to name a few. The workshops contribute to their quality of life because they feel it stimulates the mind and is emotionally uplifting. And each workshop, tour, and project provides an opportunity for participants to break through self-imposed constraints. They learn more about themselves and how they approach challenges. And it provides opportunities for creativity at all skill levels. The workshops provide a space for participants to do things together and to spend valuable time with care partners in a safe and understanding environment. Participants on our workshops made these comments, but for the sake of time, I'll just read one of them. Art is a visual media which is capable of soothing and relaxing one's mind and soul. Looking at and studying various kinds of artwork, especially in a museum setting, is an ideal stress-reducing process. We found that care partners also benefit from participating. They benefit from exposure to the wide range of subjects the workshops cover by encouraging new conversations between them and their partner, and it fosters new relationships with other care partners. The people in these workshops compare notes, they share information. It actually is a relaxed support group environment. In fact, there are times when participants will come on their own without the person that they're taking care of because they view this program as an escape and they don't want to miss it. And it also gives them a chance to look at the assumptions they may be making about the person they're taking care of and about themselves. And here's another quote from one of the care partners, but again, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip this one because I've been told I have 5 minutes. Here's the conclusion. The Philadelphia Museum of Art's mission statement says in part that it's a place that welcomes everyone, and that we're committed to inviting visitors to see the world and themselves anew through the beauty and expressive power of the arts. Programs such as the workshops for people with Parkinson support the museum's civic goal to provide high-quality arts experiences for all people. By designing accessible workshops that are engaging, fun, and sufficiently challenging for all skill levels and abilities, participants learn new things, they meet new people, and they challenge self-imposed constraints. And even though our main goal is to provide a meaningful experience for museum visitors, it turns out it's good for the institution as well. When people with disabilities become active participants rather than passive viewers, they identify more closely with the artist and artwork found in our collection, and as a result, they become a more passionate audience for the museum. Thank you.